The Board of Trustees, Weatherford College. We're here today on a special called meeting. Actually, there's two called meetings, but called meeting of the Board of Trustees of Weatherford College to be held on today's date, Tuesday, August the 8th, 2023. By my clock, it looks to be 1:05 p.m. at this point in the Aline Strain Community Room of the Doss Student Center located at 225 College Park Drive, Weatherford, Texas, to consider and act upon an agenda, and there will be a second called meeting immediately following the first. But the first one will deal with a couple of personnel matters that we have. I call the meeting to order. Mr. Baker,
Yes,
would
sir.
you honor us with an invocation?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Please bow with me. Lord, we're thankful for another semester, a fresh start on a school year. We thank you for our faculty, staff, and especially our students, and for our board members. Please be with them as they deliberate today. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much. Would you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Baker, I think you're standing in today for Ms. Worley on the comment sheet. Do we have individuals who've signed up to speak?
We do not, sir.
Okay, no one signed up. All right. We have two personnel matters to consider today. One will be an open session at the request of the affected individual concerning termination. That will be conducted in open session. We have a second session that is a closed session because that hasn't been requested to be an open session. So with that, we don't have anyone signed up to speak. We're going to plunge right into the presentation. We have representatives here on both sides. Mr. Elza, yes sir, and we have a representative for Mr. Pugh.
Ms. Cornish, right
Ms. Cornish.
here. Be nice to know where you would expect us to sit.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. I think we're going to have you over here, Ms. Cornish.
Thank you.
For today's proceeding, we are going to allow a 15-minute time period for each side to make their presentations. We'll begin with the administration's presentation. At the conclusion, yes.
I think we talked and looking at different things. I think since it's their...
If you have an agreement, that's fine by me.
They will
Okay. Okay. We'll let Ms. Cornish make her presentation. We'll limit it, both sides, to 15 minutes. At the conclusion of that, each side will be given an opportunity for a rebuttal, and we'll limit that to 10 minutes on each side. So, Ms. Cornish, if the agreement is that you will go first, then we will allow you to go first.
All right, just for the record, it says I'll go first in the appeal hearing process under your policy 6.9.7. And I think that was the basis of our agreement. Professor Pugh and I both share a respect and a fondness and value public education, particularly public higher education, very highly. And we find ourselves nevertheless in this unfortunate position where he has been retaliated against for making his concerns about Dr. eBay known to Dr. eBay as well as to the rest of the administration and to human resources. Professor Pugh is, as an attorney, understands the cost of litigation, emotional and financial, and I know that Weatherford College also understands those costs. I don't wish upon Weatherford College a blemish on its reputation or the distraction of litigation. So we're here in good faith asking that you overturn the firing of Professor Pugh that was based obviously on retaliatory motives by Dr. eBay. And as a first witness, I would call Nick Pugh. at the pleasure of the
There's a
board.
podium with a mic.
All right, Nick, how long have you been a professor?
I began teaching as an adjunct for Tarrant County College in approximately 2013,
So about 10 years?
about 10 years.
How long have you, what is your educational background, just your degrees?
After my first attempt at college, unsuccessfully, candidly, I went back to school much later in life. I got an associate's degree from Tarrant County College. I matriculated to University of Texas at Austin, where I graduated with a BA in government. And from there, I went to Albany Law School in upstate New York, where I spent a year. I was married at the time to a woman who did not like the snow, and so we returned. And I finished my law degree at Texas Wesleyan, which is now Texas A&M.
Right. And when did you finish your law degree?
2005,
When did you become a department chair at Weatherford College?
fall of 2023.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry, fall of 2022.
so one
Last fall.
semester?
Yes,
I mean,
1
not
year,
one semester,
academic year.
one academic year.
That's correct.
Did you have any prior experience at performing the duties of a department chair?
No,
Did you receive any training up until January of 2023?
no, I was told there was no training available for deans or chairs, that it was unnecessary.
And is one of the duties of a department chair creating a class schedule?
Yes,
Did you ask, Dr. eBay is your immediate supervisor, is that correct?
yes, at the time, yes.
Did you ask him for training
I did.
on creating class schedules?
I asked for generalized training, so not just for scheduling, but just in general for chairs, because I had concern that in situations not dissimilar to mine, there was not a primer available for people who did not have chair experience to come in and take over such a multifaceted role. And I made that complaint about 4 or 5 times in recorded meetings.
All right, what was his response?
No chair, no dean has ever been trained, it's unnecessary.
Did you have some scheduling difficulties as a result of your inexperience and as a result of other issues within the department?
Yes,
What were those problems?
primarily issues associated with staffing. We lost a number of staff members over the course of my tenure as a head, and we were anticipating the loss of additional staff and on a full-time basis, which meant that we had to make some adjustments hither and thither. And at the same time, I was being told that there was absolutely zero money to replace any of the full-time instructors. And so it forced us to basically tap into our adjunct pool as fast as we could.
Did Dr. eBay ever warn you that he was considering firing you?
No.
On account of any issues?
Absolutely not.
Isn't it true that actually he renewed your contract for the 2023-24 school year sometime in March of 2023?
That's correct.
And isn't it true that you filed a grievance, an 11-page grievance against Dr. eBay after March of 2023?
That is correct.
And that was filed, you filed your intent to file that grievance on April 27th
That's
of
correct.
23, and then you filed the grievance a few days later?
Within 48 hours.
Okay. I'm going to hand you what I've marked Exhibit 1 and ask if this is the notice that you filed.
Yes.
Right, and then your grievance was an 11-page document that the board should have a copy of. Does the board have a copy of the grievance? Does the board have a copy of the grievance?
I think I've seen that grievance before.
Isn't the grievance going to be the subject?
I'm not here to answer your questions. Make your presentation.
Okay, sir.
Appreciate it.
All right, Professor Pugh.
You're not the first to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm not. In your notice that you were going to file the grievance that we've introduced as Exhibit 1, did you actually state the purpose of this notice of intent is to place Weatherford College on notice for the purpose of preventing any retaliatory efforts by Dr. eBay.
That is correct.
And did the retaliatory efforts happen?
Yes, they did.
Tell me what happened and when that you think was retaliatory.
Well, I think that once I filed a grievance and called out the concerns that I had, and once I had received, and I'm assuming the college received timely, the report from school's hired counsel advising that termination was not recommended, professional training was recommended, and advising concerns relative to Dr. eBay's continued service in leadership roles. To receive the termination after that, a notice of termination once that had been filed. So the termination comes after I file a grievance and after the school's own hired counsel comes in and says there's a problem.
All right. I'm going to hand you a copy of your grievance and mark it as Exhibit 2 and ask you if this is a true copy of your grievance.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
All right. In your grievance, did you specifically accuse Dr. eBay of assault,
I did.
retaliation, harassment,
Yes.
board policy violations?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you do so in detail?
I did in detail.
All right. I do not have extra copies of Exhibit 2, but would ask that this be available for the board in the event they don't have it. In the investigation that was performed, did you receive a copy of that?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm going to mark this and ask you if that is a copy of the investigative, it's a word I can't say, report.
I understand what you mean. Yes, ma'am, it is.
All right, and again, I assume the board has this, but I publish it to the board for any members who don't have it. Is there any doubt in your mind, Professor Pugh, that the termination of the contract that had just been issued a couple of months before was done because you filed this grievance?
No doubt whatsoever.
I'll pass the witness.
Real quick, Mr. Pugh, in between the time that your contract was renewed and the time of your termination, did you have some type of conflict with Dr. eBay in his office?
I did.
You used the word fuck many times.
I know that I used it once, and you and I discussed that.
And was that when you said, fuck you, I quit?
I did.
Okay. Have you ever told any of your other supervisors in any of your other jobs, fuck you, I quit?
No, I've been self-employed for about 20 years.
Do you think that that is an appropriate way to deal with a fellow employee or supervisor?
Absolutely not. And as I told you on the day that you interviewed me, I'd like to be able to finish this because I have 15 minutes.
Please answer the question. Just
I am
ask
answering
your
the
question and answer the question.
And so, you also continue to have problems with scheduling and professors as late as May 16th of 2023, correct?
Yes,
And that happened after you received your contract, correct?
that is correct.
And in your first, there were problems with scheduling your first semester as department chair, correct?
That is correct.
In your second semester as department chair, correct?
Yes.
And we had problems going into the current semester, correct?
Yes, there were problems associated going into that semester because we lost additional staff.
And you had had other people with the college who had helped you understand and work on scheduling those prior two semesters.
I had one administrator, Dr. Scott Turnovietsky, at my request, was able to sit down with me and work with me some on that.
Okay. Is it your testimony that you still, after he helped and trained you on that, you still do not know how to do it?
It's not about not knowing how to do it. It's about filling holes that were left by unfulfilled staff problems.
You testified, you remembered asking Dr. eBay questions about training,
I do.
and you remember the training that he had on several topics.
Yes, 2 months after I suggested that we should have training.
Explain to this board who you were on the phone with outside of the room during the majority of that training.
That was with a professor who was having a problem.
I have no further questions.
Did you miss a majority of the training?
Absolutely not.
All right. Did you later attend to or watch a recording of the training?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And the problems that Dr. eBay refers to in his memo of May 25th, he refers to some problems as of May 16th and May 22nd. Were those problems your fault?
No.
Where did the problems lie?
I don't know that I would say that anybody was at fault. There were issues with professors who had indicated they were not returning, and so we had staffing issues.
So it wasn't because of a lack of training or a
Absolutely
lack
not.
of information on your part. You simply did not have the resources.
They were issues beyond my control as a department head.
All right, and had you attempted to investigate the idea of hiring other professors or adjuncts?
We discussed it internally in our department, but it has been made very clear to us that that was not happening.
And what's the reason that that wasn't happening?
I don't know the answer to that, but I'm assuming it's financial.
All right. So, were any of the problems that you had with scheduling after January 3rd of 2023 the result of your lack of training, or were they a result of staffing issues?
They were a result of staffing issues at that point. Or at that point, excuse me.
And did Dr. eBay use any sort of what I'm going to call progressive discipline? Where he,
No.
You know what I mean by
I know
progressive
exactly
discipline?
what you meant.
Never warned?
No. And
Ever?
I did ask for a copy of my HR file so that that could be provided to everybody, and I have not received that. My
Right.
guess is that my HR file will contain no corrections.
Have we also asked for all the emails between you and eBay in order to present them at this hearing?
We did, and we have not received those.
All right. That's all I have from this witness.
Thank you. That concludes the first 15-minute session. Mr. President,
I have Dr. eBay to call.
that's 15 minutes.
Well, at least 3 of those minutes were rebuttal when I,
No, I gave you credit for his time when he was asking questions as well.
you're going to cut me off without letting me question Dr. eBay.
I'm going to give you an opportunity for the rebuttal that I announced when this began. So if you want to call him in your rebuttal, you
Yes,
can do
sir.
that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, I think that my part of this will be pretty brief. And
Yes, sir.
I'm going to give a summary of how we got here, but we heard most of it from the testimony just now. This was a case of a new department chair or department head. We can all agree on that. But we had problems in the first semester that he got help with. Had problems in the second semester that we got him help with. And then May post-contract, we were still having those same troubles. After that questioning, I think y'all probably heard a bit of a shift in the approach here. Originally, it was that he did not have the training. When it was pointed out that there was training, that story shifted pretty quickly to there was a staffing issue. All the other department heads were able to successfully complete the job, and that is a red herring here. The idea was briefly brought up about progressive discipline, and I would tell y'all, you're welcome to look at your policy. There are not mandated steps, but there are certain things, fulfilling your professional duties, that are expected of professionals. There are certain things like not saying vile words to your supervisor and quitting are not things that need to be progressively disciplined. The steps that were taken are laid out in the May 25th, 2023 Notice of Recommended Termination. There were 2 reasons given. Failure to perform job duties in the area of creating department course schedules dating back to January of 2023, and the incidents of insubordination, including raising your voice and using profanity towards your supervisor. There's no dispute, even from Mr. Pugh in his testimony today, that that is in fact what happened. The standard for this board to look at is good cause. And we know if we look back at some administrative decisions that professional failures insubordination, and taking actions that would cause a loss of respect and an inability to deal with fellow employees have all been found to constitute good cause in an education setting. I think that the facts are not in dispute here. It was very much based on information that anybody would have been terminated for in either of those instances, had nothing to do with retaliation. And I would also tell you, I don't think it's as important, because Mr. Pugh admitted to the problems with his scheduling and with his instructors, but that is something that before Dr. Farmer made the decision to terminate, that he did go investigate so that he had knowledge independent of the complaint from Dr. eBay that those had continued to be problems spanning over what was going to become a third semester. Thank you for your time. I guess we're going to have rebuttal. I'll wait to see if
Each
there's new
side will be
information.
given 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'll wait to see if there's any new information presented, and if so, I'll address that in my rebuttal.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cornish.
I call Dr. eBay.
Okay. Dr. eBay, do you want to proceed from there or at the podium?
I can go to the podium.
Okay.
You ready?
Right.
All right. On the May 23rd, I think it is, May 25th email that you wrote to Paul Williams, you only wrote it to Paul Williams, and you listed out some reasons that you thought Professor Pugh should be terminated. Who did you talk to before you wrote this about whether or not Professor Pugh's employment should be terminated?
No one.
You're telling me no one?
Yeah, whatever is on the email is what you have.
Yeah, I'm asking you who you talked to before you wrote the email about Professor Pugh's employment.
I don't recall talking to anyone, and I don't seek permission to talk to somebody before I write an email.
Did anyone talk to you about it?
I can't recall.
Did you discuss it with anyone while you were writing it?
I can't recall.
How did you come up with these dates?
With the dates,
Yeah.
if there's any dates involved, it must be a conversation between myself and Professor Pugh.
Did you write this May 25th email?
I don't know the email you're talking
All
about.
right. May I borrow your copy? Oops, the email. Sorry. Here's a copy of it. It's got some, thank you. Mine has notes all over it. That's it.
Is that the one?
That's the one,
Is
yeah.
that an exhibit already?
Mhm. Should be Exhibit 2. Did you write that email?
If my name is on it, I wrote it.
You don't remember writing this email, Exhibit 2?
Again, if it's my name, I wrote it. If that's what you're saying, that's my name on it, right?
Okay. Did you discuss it with anyone?
Again, I don't recall.
Did you send any emails or texts to other people about Professor Pugh's employment after April 26th?
I can't recall.
You would not destroy those emails, though, would you?
Again, I say I can't recall. I don't know what you're referencing to. I can't recall.
All right. When Professor Pugh's contract for the next year, for this upcoming year, was signed, did you discuss that with anybody?
Professor Pugh's contract is between him and HR.
My question to you is whether you discussed it with anybody.
I don't discuss contracts of employees. Employee contract is between the employer, the employee, and HR.
You could have written HR a letter long before May 23rd of, May 25th of 2023 though, correct?
Maybe. I write emails all the time. That's my job.
Did you, during that April 26th meeting, slam your fist down in anger?
Slam my fist at him. In anger,
Yes.
I don't recall. On what premise? Why would I do that? Could you explain?
Well, I can show you my understanding, if it doesn't knock the table down. My understanding is that you came across the table partially and slammed your fist down really hard.
That is untrue.
That is not your, okay.
That is not. That is untrue.
Did you raise your voice during that meeting?
That is untrue.
You did not raise your voice?
I did not.
All right. I don't have anything else.
Thank you. Nothing in rebuttal?
Oh,
Okay.
no, I may have a quick rebuttal. I have nothing for this one.
Okay, all right. Dr. Ebay, you can have a seat. You still have 3 minutes left on your side of the presentation.
I'm finished.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Elza?
I would incorporate what I said in my original presentation. I think the one thing that's really relevant from the questioning of Dr. Ebay is that even after the contract had happened, there continued to be problems up to and including May 16th, which is incorporated into that email. I would ask that this board uphold the termination recommendation for good cause based on one or both of the reasons stated in Dr. Farmer's letter. And that's all I have, but before we completely recess, I'd like to consult with council about our exhibits, because I may have
Okay.
written down exhibit wrong, but that is all
Okay,
that I
y'all
have.
can work that
Okay,
out.
and I think that will resolve this portion of the hearing, correct?
Well, I do need to ask Nick one question, if it's all right.
Yes.
You wouldn't need to stand up.
Okay.
Did Dr. Ebay, during that April 26th meeting, raise his voice?
Yes,
Did he slam his fist down on the table in anger?
3 times telling me to, quote, "shut the hell up."
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you. That will conclude the open session of today's meeting. We will, at this point, go into the second part of the personnel matters for today, which by virtue of not having been a request for an open session, this will be a closed session. And so at this point, we'll take a brief recess while the board gets ready to enter into this closed session. And following that, we will be back with any motions and seconds and approval. Yes.
So, just so the record's clear, because I think we got off. Exhibit 1 is a notice that's up there. Exhibit 2 is his grievance. Exhibit 3 is my investigative report. And what she thought was Exhibit 2 that was referred to is, we're going to mark as Exhibit 4, which is the letter laying out the professional concerns.
Letter from who?
It's the eBay that was referenced from,
Okay.
the letter from Dr. eBay to HR.
Now, do we have that document now?
She just
Okay,
gave it to me.
okay.
The record was going to be mixed up.
It was.
We didn't
Yeah,
do that.
well, and for purposes of record, Exhibit 2 is actually the formal grievance document as opposed to what might have been stated. So we have these 4 exhibits to consider, all right? Then we will, at this time, adjourn and be going into a closed session for the other matter.
For the record, Professor Pugh is perfectly happy with the next discussion being open. We weren't given that option, so we didn't express an opinion on it. But
Yeah, we're going into closed session.
but we don't object. We are fine with open.
I hear what you say.
Okay.
Thank you. The time now is 2:12 p.m. for my timepiece. We're back in session once again after having concluded our deliberations on both of the personnel matters before us today, having had an opportunity to hear from both sides, Ms. Cornish and Mr. Elza, during the closed session. We're at the point where the chair will entertain a motion on each of those personnel matters. The first motion would be to sustain or not sustain the termination of employee Nick Pugh. Is there a motion one way or the other in that regard?
I make a motion to uphold Professor Pugh's termination.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of that motion? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. There's the second matter of whether to accept or reject the grievance that was filed by Mr. Pugh against Dr. eBay. Is there a motion one way or the other on that matter?
I make the motion to reject the grievance brought by Mr. Pugh against Dr. eBay.
Is there a second on that motion?
I second.
All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes on both counts. As far as the first called session for today's work, as I mentioned previously, there is a second called session having to do with budget matters that we will be entering into right after the conclusion of this. I will entertain a motion to adjourn this portion of the called meetings for today.
I so move.
Okay, second? All in favor? Aye. This motion, these hearings are concluded. We will commence the second called meeting in just a few minutes.